When it was revealed that House Brobnar would be returning for Winds of Exchange, KeyForge players everywhere knew it would have to come back swinging, or risk being the most hated house in the game for a second time. As we all know, Brobnar's previous iteration in Worlds Collide was infamous for how atrocious and underpowered it was. In fact, I made a whole skit about what must have been going through the developers' minds when they greenlit Worlds Collide Brobnar. So I'm sure many of you are asking, now that some of us have gotten to play with some new Winds of Exchange Brobnar decks at KeyForge Celebration 2022, is Brobnar any good? Have they redeemed themselves since Worlds Collide? Well, let's take a look at what they have to offer in this new set and find out. One of Brobnar's biggest problems in Worlds Collide was the average size of their creatures. Many of them were 5 or less power, with a few exceptions, and in general the only way to make them bigger was if they were already damaged, or if they came with their matching brew, turning them into their mega versions. The larger a creature got, the more drawbacks it would incur on itself, and NARP is one of the most classic examples of this. Compare all that to Saurian, who had creatures equally as large or larger than those in Brobnar, with benefit after benefit stacked upon them. This, combined with the fact that Brobnar had very few ways to actually generate Ember in Worlds Collide, meant that fighting with Brobnar was more ineffective than ever. Winds of Exchange does not have this problem for the most part. Firepower is hardly ever an issue. At common, we have 7 power creatures like Jarl's Vend, who makes a token creature when he destroys something while fighting, and Krog the Clumsy, who has Splash Attack 2. Some great reprints make a return as well: Bumpsy, Fire Spitter, Heeb the Huge, and Earthshaker, the latter two being great counters against token creatures, which are typically small and vulnerable. Blood of Titans returns, putting a major power boost on a creature of your choice, and one of my favorite new Brobnar creatures, just in terms of raw firepower, is Crim Torchtooth, at 7 power and wielding Splash Attack 4. This set also brings together all the members of the Brobnar band Bracken, consisting of Harmal Atun, Jedhammer, Volca, and Brick Nasty, along with a card called Halifest to get them all on the board. The 4 of them function quite nicely together, with Brick Nasty being one of the most notable, reminiscent of cards like Warsong. Harmal Atun is also pretty remarkable, reading, "Each other friendly Brobnar creature gains, destroyed, return this creature to its owner's hand." Of course, not every Brobnar creature is that big. Creatures like Pelf are only 3 power, but have Skirmish and a fight effect that offers some Ember control. Kretchy can act as some anti-Saurian tech, or support for cards like Fresh Marks. And Brobnar's token creatures vary in size, but are still very fight-oriented. Skirmisher is 2 power with Skirmish, Grumpus is 2 power with Splash Attack 1, while Warrior and Berserker are on the larger end of the spectrum, but again, want to do nothing but fight. Our next question is an important one for Brobnar. How consistently can they actually fight? What sort of ready and fight effects do they have? Sets prior to Worlds Collide had plenty of options for this. Gauntlet of Command, Anger, Relentless Assault, and Ganger Chieftain are just a few examples. Worlds Collide had the distinct lack of this. Cards like Alaka and Stiltkin were about it, and neither of them were very good. In Winds of Exchange, we have cards like Might Club and Shockherder at common, acting as good instant fight providers. Berserker, one of Brobnar's token creatures, enters play ready and enraged. Berserker's fight effect doesn't look very ideal at first, but it always comes paired with the 7 power rare Revna Starsong, who removes each Berserker's fight effects. Jedhammer from the Bracken band, who we mentioned earlier, reads, destroyed, ready and enrage each other friendly Brobnar creature. Endless Hordes is also a pretty insane card, especially if your deck comes with a Brobnar token creature such as Warrior, or the 1 power Unfathomable Raider who gets poison while it's your turn. So we've seen that Brobnar has plenty of big creatures, and has consistent ways of fighting with those creatures, making them able to control the board pretty well. But can they generate Ember while doing so? Cards like Warsong have evolved into the creature Brick Nasty. In multiples, Brick Nasty can generate Ember pretty quickly, and I believe will become a staple of Winds of Exchange as time goes on. Another great card is Fresh Marks, reading, play, destroy friendly creature. If you do, exalt 3 enemy creatures. It's an interesting twist on classic cards like Blood Money, and consistently being able to take those exalted creatures out can lead to some pretty substantial burst. I recently made a video about a deck I opened at KFC 22 with 3 copies of Fresh Marks in it, 2 of them enhanced with extra Ember Pips. Smith returned from Worlds Collide, rewarding you for staying ahead on board. Looter Goblin returns as well, practically loot the bodies in creature form. And of course, if there's not much on the board for you to fight off, then you have some big, difficult to remove bodies to reap with. Amber control is another very important aspect of KeyForge, and Winds of Exchange Brobnar has a decent amount of that as well, that can actually go off pretty consistently. Some really solid reprints provide this, such as Berserker Slam, Bumpsy, Unguarded Camp, and Shattered Throne. Iron Obelisk returns as well, as does Overrun. Overrun was a pretty widely disliked card in Worlds Collide, but goes off so much more regularly in Winds of Exchange. New cards include Pelth, who we mentioned earlier, and Ragnarok Prep, reading, make a token creature. Then, if you control more creatures than your opponent loses 2 Ember. Again, rewards you for being ahead on board, makes token creatures, and destroys your opponent's Ember. There's also Rant and Rive, Brobnar's newest iteration of scaling Ember control, reading, play, if your opponent has 8 or more Ember, they lose half their Ember, rounding down the loss. Infinitely better than Power of Fire if you ask me. So far, Brobnar seems to have all their bases covered. They have big bodies, they can control the board, they can generate Ember, and they can control the opponent's Ember. The house as a whole feels very strong, and everything synergizes fantastically. The last base we haven't covered, however, is a new one to Winds of Exchange, that of token generation. The ability to frequently make token creatures is pretty important, and once again, Brobnar rises to the occasion. If your token creature belongs to Brobnar, you know you'll be fighting more than ever. But if your token creature belongs to a different house, Brobnar can actually act as a phenomenal support house for whichever house your token creature shows up in, being able to generate lots of them and set you up for big turns in other houses down the road. Feats of Strength reads play. For the remainder of the turn, each time an enemy creature is destroyed in a fight, make a token creature. Brawl In makes 2 token creatures and enrages them, and Stratosmack reads deal 3 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, make a token creature. And we can't forget about the Grand Gourd, full of Brobnar flavor, reading, at the start of your turn, if you control the most powerful creature, or a creature tied for most powerful, make a token creature. But what's interesting about Brobnar is that they have tons of tech designed to counter token creatures as well. If your opponent's deck spams lots of token creatures, Brobnar has ways to handle it. Token creatures tend to be quite small, usually less than 3 power, meaning creatures like Heeb the Huge and Earthshaker, 2 reprints from previous sets, are perfect to take them out in swaths. Pingle Who Annoys and Autocannon were also reprinted, keeping 1 power token creatures such as Diplomat or Bot from even entering play. So if your opponent can generate tokens far faster than yourself, Brobnar is quite effective in dealing with them. The only problem comes when you yourself generate lots of tiny token creatures in your own deck. Brobnar can then create some anti-synergy with that. So in the end, Brobnar seems to be a really solid house in Winds of Exchange. They even have an insane new artifact called Ancient Battleground, which reads, each friendly creature cannot reap, and gains after fight, gain 1 Ember. And lastly, we can't forget about the 18 power Frost Giant. Back in the days of Worlds Collide, you probably would have never got to actually use him, but with how versatile Brobnar is in this new set, I feel that Frost Giant is a force to be reckoned with. And there we have it, a quick look at the history of House Brobnar, its appearance in Winds of Exchange, and the crazy new cards that have been printed in this newest set. Brobnar has gone through quite the evolution over the years, and I feel its incarnation here in Winds of Exchange is one of its strongest yet. It can set the tempo for how you want the board to look over the course of the game, and can simultaneously advance your game plan. It can counter token-heavy decks while generating plenty of tokens themselves. Of course, they're not the perfect house, and as always they can feel a bit slow at times, but overall, Winds of Exchange pushes the boundaries of what Brobnar can do, and in my opinion, they have definitely redeemed themselves from when they were last seen in Worlds Collide. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.